Here.
Commissioner Yarish.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We're going to start with 1A, ask for approval of special minutes on May 5th, 2022. If everybody's had a chance to look at them, do we have a motion to approve or any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor of accepting the minutes for May 5th, 2022, signify by saying aye.
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 The motion passes. 1B, we're not ready for that one at this time, so I think we need to vote to table that 1B until the next meeting. Can I have a motion to table that?
I'll make a motion to table the July minutes until they're available.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of tabling these minutes for July 28, 2022, signify by saying aye.
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 That passes. Now, consideration of public comments. Do we have any public comments? No, we do not. Okay.
I'm gonna wait, let me turn on my microphone. No, we do not.
Okay. All right, we're going to go on down to, actually, number 2, anything? Yeah, that was consideration. Number 3 is new business, water variance request for Wallach Ranch, tract 1961K. Do we have staff?
All right, good evening, Commissioners. This is a request from Pete Profit on behalf of Shannon Nugent for a variance for the Wallach Ranch Tract 1961K subdivision. The applicant is requesting that the requirement to construct a water main in Willow Road be waived, and is proposing to use the existing infrastructure in Wallach Ranch Drive and Gene Autry Drive for the connection points, and to route lines within the proposed development within Allen Ladd Drive and Rex Allen Drive. So the parcel in question is this one right here. You can see that there's existing infrastructure on the west, south. You'll notice that there's a water line stubbed to the north on Willow, and there's a water main on Gordon Drive with the water main stubbed to the south on Willow. In terms of this request, the city utility regulations state that the developer needs to extend the water system to and through the development as necessary to ensure adequate water supply to the development and access to properties beyond the development. Fire hydrants shall be located as to be readily accessible, plainly visible, and shall be located at intersections when possible. Hydrant spacing shall be 500 feet. And just a quick note on that, our utility regulations say 600 feet for residential, but ADQ's been requiring us to go to 500 feet, and ADQ has the ultimate say on the hydrant spacing. Also, the utility regulations require extensions to the City of Kingman water system, beginning at the nearest point as determined to be adequate by the water superintendent, and a public water extension shall be required to extend across the total frontage of the property to be served. And so that's kind of a summary of what the regulations require in this instance. When this request came in, we sent it out for comment to city staff. And in your agenda packet, you'll see that there were comments from the engineering department, the public works department, and the fire department. All were recommending denial of the variance. The Public Works Department provided some comments, and the fire department just denied it. They didn't provide additional comment. So just as a point of clarification. So generally, as it relates to the requirements, a public water extension is required across the total frontage of the property, and that would include Willow Road. Additionally, a fire hydrant would be required somewhere along Willow Road that would meeting the 500-foot spacing requirement. And the Public Works Department in their comments had indicated that they were wanting the water line in Willow as well for operational reasons. So a little bit of history on the project. The original water service approval for this subdivision, for the entire subdivision, was granted in 1997. And as conditions to that water service approval, the conditions were to extend water in accordance with the utility regulations, to install fire hydrants as required by the fire department, and the water extension needed to be, well, for each phase, you need, the developer needed to show the water extension for each phase would adequately supply the needed flows for fire protection and domestic use. So those were the conditions in 1997. In a previous action, construction plans were reviewed and approved in 2006. And at that time, the water main in Willow Road was shown on those plans. But the project's been dormant, or at least this phase has been dormant since that time. And in 2021, plans were resubmitted to start the project again. Development in the area to date, as I mentioned before, has installed a water main in Willow Road. And I mentioned before there was a water stub that was provided with the last phase of Wallach Ranch to the north, and this water stub to the south was provided by the city earlier so that the line could be extended. Some of the benefits of extending the water main across the frontage of the property are it provides looping for our system. And looping helps us maintain consistency in system pressures, provides better flow throughout the system, and allows the city to better maintain water quality. Looping also provides us operational flexibility under varying operating conditions. And looping also gives us additional options in the event of a main failure to that subdivision. So with all of that being said, staff's position is that the main be extended in Willow Road for the reasons that we just went through, and to be consistent with what was approved in the past. And so that's my summary. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. The applicant is here as well to answer any questions that you might have.
Is there any question?
Yeah, you said it wasn't on the second set of drawings? The line wasn't on the second set of drawings?
So there, when they resubmitted last year, they were not showing it then. In the first set of drawings that were approved in 2006, those plans show the water line in Willow.
Just to be clear, the resubmission last
Is
year was
your
not,
microphone on?
it's on.
Okay, just want to make sure.
The resubmission last year was not approved yet.
It has not been approved yet.
So that's
We
pending.
made the comment to put the water main in Willow, and that's kind of what prompted this action.
It's outstanding.
I can't really see the map from here. Can you like point out exactly where Willow is and where this water line has to be run? There we go, okay, there we go.
So Willow is this road right here. And so the water stub I was talking about, there's a stub to the south here. And then the water line in Willow goes north and ended at the phase line of the last phase of the development.
So what's on the other side of Willow? I should know. What's on the other side of Willow?
Which direction? West or east?
It'd be to the east.
It's
So
that park.
vacant.
there's homes, they're larger lots. There's a few homes to the east. And then there's another road, I think it's Lomita, further east. So on this side, it's there's some vacant properties, and then there's some properties, the properties to the north. Like I think this lot right here, this lot, and this lot have homes on them.
How is water being facilitated to those homes at this time?
They currently are connected through Lomita. They have frontage on Lomita.
Does that line dead end?
That line dead ends. The one on Lomita dead ends, yes. And I can pull it up if we need to see it, but
Tell you what, I'll be quite frank, I'm a little bit lost here. We've got all of those houses right there. They're being supplied water. And it's my understanding that you're asking to run a new water line down through there. Is that correct?
so
On Willow.
On what?
Yeah.
on Willow.
There must be a water line in Willow. Is that correct? No, there's
No,
nothing?
no. It stopped with the last phase right to the south. So the water line is in Willow, and it stops right here, where that little green dot is right there.
Okay.
And then there's nothing here, and then where this green dot is right here, that's where the line is. So what we're asking is to connect the line between the green dots.
Where do the houses on the west side get their water from?
So the line in Gordon comes down through here. It goes south and is feeding all of these. There's stubs going east here, and then ultimately the line kind of meanders back down and ties into Keno.
So that line going there doesn't make your loop? Or the loop you're talking about, just moving it to by Keno?
So we would get some looping through Wallach Ranch Drive.
Okay.
But what again, for the best practice and the policy is to have it come up Willow so that it provides us more redundancy that we need for our system. And also, we need a fire hydrant in Willow.
Are those stub outs on those streets, are those gonna get continued into that new phase?
Yeah,
Are they
so-
gonna tie into Willow, or are they gonna be,
Yeah,
just
so
loop?
let me see if I can, so this is the plan.
Okay. So none of them are gonna exit out onto Willow?
Correct, so the line would come up here in Allen Ladd Drive, go around through, and then connect to the stubs or the connections that are ready on the east side.
Does that not create the loop you need?
Again, we're, for operational reasons, we need this line so that we can adequately provide pressure and flow to the connection point down here at Gene Autry. And it provides us operational flexibility, so if something goes down, we like to have that along the frontage so that we can, shut down a main somewhere else and still keep this one going.
How many additional lots are platted in that particular area? 66?
56.
56?
Did you say 50?
56.
56.
I mean, the ordinances are pretty cut and dry on that as far as what's required, but I'm just trying to understand the reason for the variance request on it, so maybe we need to hear from the person that's asking at that point.
Yeah.
I tell you what, just before you leave,
Yeah.
and I'm going right along with what was just mentioned here. Normally, what we look at is future development. Where you're talking about running that line down Willow would supply all of this stuff back to the east, I guess, from there. Is that correct?
I would have to look, but it might provide, I think there might be some vacant lots down here that, that may benefit from that line being extended so that they can connect into it. But really, it's an operational thing for us. The regulations are there so that we have that redundancy that we need for our system operations.
But it's basically, from what you just told us, it's not helping anybody else. It's for operational stuff.
Well, like I said, it might help a couple of these lots here. I would have to double check.
Okay.
But it would help for the fire hydrant as well. And then for our operational redundancy to provide good pressure, flow, quality. We don't like dead ends, and that can create water quality issues for us. And so we like to have everything looped.
Would they be subject to any paybacks from additional lots on that east side that might? tap
They
into
could
that?
record a payback if they wanted to, and if someone tied into it, that's certainly an option.
But most likely, they would tie into the other side, the front of the lot.
Here, let me see if I can. So, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is Lamita right here. We'll give it a minute to refresh. So this is Lamita, and it's probably going about as far south as it can go. And so there's this one property here. So depending on where they connected, they might just be able to connect into here.
So by adding these 56 lots to the existing dead-end system that's in there now, is that going to overtax the existing system?
We have capacity to serve the existing homes. And so really, I don't know if I'm answering this question right, but we certainly have sufficient capacity, and we'll be able to provide water within our regulations with pressure and flow. What we're trying to say is to help us do that better and consistently, we need this connection in Willow so that we have some redundancy to get flow into different parts. Say if there's a main break somewhere and we have to shut down a line, we can still have a good feed coming down Willow and through Gene Autry. It's tough to predict all the different scenarios, but that's what we're looking to provide.
I understand the benefit of a loop system like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Is everybody all right? All right.
They'd
If we
like
can-
to speak, maybe?
Hmm?
Maybe they would like to speak.
Yeah, that's what I'm fixing to ask for.
Thank you. My name is Peter Profit. I'm the civil engineer on this project. And I apologize, I haven't been to a MUC meeting in a while. I don't know if this made it to your packet. I had a letter here with an exhibit here that I think is going to be kind of required to make my case. If Phil, can you pull up the map that you had there, and maybe I can try to show what's happening there. But I think a couple of key things that need to be addressed are, one, our variance is not a request to not adhere to the utility regulations. We believe we are adhering to them. And it's just, we feel that this line being requested by city staff is redundant. What part of what my packet explained is the city of Kingman utility regulations indicate that a developer, and this is in the subdivision portion of the utility regulations, a developer shall extend said system to and through the development as necessary to ensure adequate supply to the development and access to properties beyond the development. So, you know, any subdivision that we do, we know we have to take the water to the subdivision, get it through the subdivision so that any future development can connect to where we extended it and continue on. So we've done that here. We're connected. There's no development in any direction that is not going to have water. So we've met that regulation. There is a regulation pertaining to frontage that water is supposed to extend across the frontage. It's in a different set of the utility regulations. It specifically says this doesn't pertain to parcels in the airport tract, which is, that is really referring to individual parcels that have to get water service. Again, we're aware of that regulation. We've adhered to it for decades. If an individual parcel requires water service, they have to extend the line past their parcel, whether it's 1 acre, 2 acre, 1 lot, whatever it is. This is a different situation because it's a subdivision. So taking that regulation at its word, every lot inside our subdivision has water across the frontage of it. Willow Road is not a frontage for us. So, I mean, maybe splitting hairs, but that's what I'm talking about, is we're meeting the regulation as it's written, and you could interpret it a different way, I guess. So the key factor about the looping is something that we've addressed. Again, is there a pointer on this, Phil? Okay. So basically, if you can see the interior of our subdivision, if you can see where I'm tracking here, there's going to be water lines on interior roads within our subdivision, and we had proposed to run a line from Gordon into our subdivision. So although it's not required by the engineering design that we had to do of the system as part of the MUC regulations, we do a model of the system and show when these lots are connected, there won't be any, I mean, that will meet the minimum pressure requirements without any undue stress on other parts of the system. So we do a model of it. That's what led to this situation where we said we don't need to connect to Gordon or Willow because the city's water system will provide the service that we need. However, to meet these regulations, there is a looping requirement, even though we're connecting to the existing system at 1, 2, 3 spots. We had proposed to run another line out the corner to connect to Gordon. So this would provide a complete redundant loop system. There's absolutely no technical reason for the line in Willow. So beyond that, there's the issue of, are we providing any service to the lots, any development in Willow, which you addressed. I believe these parcels that we're talking about that aren't developed here are city-owned parcels. They're part of the drainage, the drainage causeway right-of-way for the channel here. So I don't expect them to be developed, but nonetheless, they could connect to this line that's in Willow or the line in Lomita. The lots that are existing on the east side of Willow, they get their water service off of Lomita. There are fire hydrants on both ends of that line in Lomita. There's fire hydrants at Gordon on 3 spots north of our project. Wallach Ranch, 3 spots west of it, 3 spots south of it. We're adding fire hydrants inside our subdivision, 5 fire hydrants. So again, that's kind of what the question is to just see if we can have a favorable interpretation of MUC, and we're not asking for any, we're not asking to not have to adhere to the utility regulations. We're saying we have adhered to them. And this line is redundant. It's completely understandable. City staff would want to have more water line. I guess the functionality of being able to shut down a system if there was a problem. Like I said, we're connecting at 5 different spots to the existing system. So there's plenty of other locations that can be shut down. If a water line breaks in our new development, any one of those 5 locations could be shut down. If a water line breaks adjacent to our development, we're getting it from 4 other locations if one happens to be disabled. So the last point that I just want to talk about is these previous approvals that have shown this Willow Road line and why it's not in there now. So back in 2005, we did that system model that I'm talking about. The characteristics of the water system at that time indicated that this Willow line would be required to have us meet our minimum pressure. The system's changed and been upgraded. The city's added new lines. They've added new lines in Keno. They've upsized lines. More development on the water system actually improves the system in certain areas. So these are reasons why it's different now. And we run the model today, and it shows that we don't need this line in Willow. So we excluded it. And then the final factor is the cost of all this stuff, obviously, since 2005 has doubled or tripled, and we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars for a line in Willow and a couple fire hydrants that provide no technical benefit to the system at all. Again, Phil kind of mentioned some preferences of city staff, but we don't have any technical information that says this will make their system better. I haven't seen their comments, staff's comments, but I've been talking to staff for weeks about this leading up to this meeting, and I haven't seen any technical benefit to having the line in Willow. So I believe that pretty much concludes my request. Is there any questions I can answer?
I do have a question. Do you have anything that illustrates your interior design on that
Yeah.
part of the subdivision that shows where you're?
Mr. Chairman, can I approach with this? Yeah. Oh, okay. A different page?
Does that satisfy the 500-foot rule for the fire department?
The interior hydrants, they're the green dots on there are our hydrant. They're every 500 feet.
So this is what I was referring to.
So-
It shows the,
In looking at this, it looks like you're connecting the dots between the stub that's on Gordon and the stub that's on Gene Autry,
Yes,
which in itself is a loop.
yes.
So basically, the only difference would be that loop would move out onto Willow as opposed to just being on the interior of your track. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's like a redundant line. I mean, we were already running a line parallel to Willow and taking it out to Gordon. And so adding another line in Willow, going to Gordon is just an added expense.
And I understand that does seem to be redundant when you're already looping the system in that category, so.
You guys want to look at that? I tell you what, I'd like to just, from what I'm sitting here listening to, you have, I believe you said 5 different hookups to water.
Yeah.
If any one of the 5 failed, the rest of them, if you had to shut that off, would take care of the subdivision.
Yes.
The next thing that I'd like to state that we heard earlier was that we have one lot that that line may or may not service, but it would also be serviced by the existing line that's there.
Yes. There's
So in
one.
other words, we're not helping any more land out there. And other than putting a line in Willow, we've got everything covered with loops anyway.
Yes, and that's what we see with the situation, yes.
Now, if I could hear from staff just a second, what I just said, is that your opinion as being correct, other than looping the line?
so the property to the east, if it connected in, it would be connected to a dead-end line, right? So we might have a little bit of an issue with water quality or anything like that.
You mean if they tied into Lomita or
No,
right across the street?
right across the street, that line would be a dead-end line at that point,
Okay.
right?
Isn't that a city parcel?
It is, but they're actually looking to develop it.
Okay.
So you're talking about minimal lots on that east side, though? There's no,
It'd be maybe 1 or 2, at least 1. I don't know how many more it would get.
so this loop that they're creating on-site, is that a sufficient loop to do what needs to be done if you have to isolate a certain portion of that, as
So
opposed to having a redundant line on Willow?
So
I
one-
understand the difference.
one thing I want to point out is that when they do their modeling, they make certain assumptions of what the system can and can't do at their points of connection. And so when we're looking at it from a macro, a lot larger scale, right? So the reason why we're asking for that line is so that we can continue to provide sufficient pressure at the points that they're connecting, that they're modeling, assuming that it's going to have whatever pressure and flow that we have right now, right? Over time, the system changes, like Pete said. And that could go up, that could go down. It just depends on how the system fluctuates. And so having this line provides us the flexibility we need to provide service adequately to the area.
So what's the line size difference between the on-site line that they're proposing to put in on-site and
Are
the Willow line?
you guys proposing 6 or are you? Okay, so they're the same size.
So I'm not quite understanding. I'm not an engineer.
Right.
But just from a plumbing and pressure standpoint, you've got a loop that's just offset inside property instead of a loop that's on Willow that's the same size, connecting the same 2 dots. How is that going to make a difference?
The difference is if something goes wrong on the interior of that, we now have lost that loop that we need on the macro scale to keep water flowing on the exterior to provide the looping that we want. It's just a matter of redundancy.
found
this,
it.
drawing we got up here, shows up in the top right-hand corner, there's a possibility of running a line from that.
Yeah,
side
so
over.
what they're proposing would be to run a line through here and tie into Gordon, right? Yeah,
Would that help your system if they took care of that?
yeah, it certainly would help, but what we're saying from a system standpoint, it's better for us to have the main in Willow than on the interior road. Which is why it's a requirement to extend across the total frontage of the development.
Right.
Has staff run a model like they do with,
I don't think, no, we haven't run it yet to see what the effect would be. We typically wouldn't do it for every single development, right? We have the regulations and the policy, and we just follow it, knowing that that's the best practice, and that works for what we need.
I'm going to say something that I kind of think a lot of us are thinking up here. We have two expert people speaking to us, and we're hearing two different answers, and this is going to be a little difficult.
Yeah, I guess what the applicant is saying is they've run a model, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not disputing his model results. But what I'm saying is, in order for us to, like, he didn't model the entire water system. He just modeled a smaller portion of his development, right? And he made certain assumptions at the connection points. And so, from a technical standpoint, what we're saying is, in order for us to maintain the system in such a way to where what he's modeling is going to be consistent over time, we want the line in Willow. That's why we have the policy and the regulation, right? And then, again, the other thing is, even though there's fire hydrants on the interior of the subdivision, we still need one on the exterior for coverage on Willow. I mean, to assume that there isn't going to be a fire on Willow isn't the best assumption to make. And so we require fire hydrants on our collectors and arterial streets as well.
So what would be stopping them from running a fire hydrant off that interior loop to the location that?
They could try to run something through one of their lots or this drainage parcel here. It would be a long run for a fire hydrant service line. We would need an easement, and we would need to be able to get in and maintain the line within the drainage parcel. That's just not typical. That's not standard of what we're looking for.
Well, Paul, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said this is a difficult situation here, but as I have said before in these meetings, if everything was easy and cut and dry, we wouldn't need to have this commission. So I hear over and over again how hard and how it's getting harder and harder to develop lots within the city of Kingman, and to me this is just like one more roadblock that a developer has to face. Surely he will pass the cost or the savings, if he does not have to do this, the cost or the savings will be passed on to the consumer. Extra cost just means fewer people can qualify and buy the houses, which I guess is not our problem, but So my personal opinion is, I think the developer has a very good argument here. It is a gray area. It's not cut and dried. The system is going to work without the new water line. Might not be perfect, but I think I'll go on record as being in favor of granting the variance.
I have one more question, just for clarification, for the record. You stated there was 5 tie-in points, but on the map that I'm looking at that you gave us, I see 3 tie-in points with the option of a 4th if you run through that corner lot to tie into Gordon. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, I apologize. I was thinking of the connection that we have to Wallach Ranch Road and Gordon as being an additional connection. We're only connecting to Gordon in one place, so you're correct. If we run this through the corner to Gordon, we'll connect at Gordon, and then 2 streets to the west and 1 street to the south. So that's a total of 4 is what we're proposing, so I apologize.
So what you're proposing is 3 tie-in points, but if you're granted the variance with an option for a 4th tie-in point
Yes.
through that corner lot?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
I'd just like to ask a question of staff a second. We were talking about modeling, and I tell you the truth, what I'm really asking is how expensive and how time-consuming is, and how hard is it for the city to actually model the whole system to where they can give us a reasonable feedback on what it would do beyond this. In other words, is that something that would be very expensive and time-consuming?
The cost would probably be, I don't know, $1,000, $1,000 to $2,000 to run it. And it would, take us maybe 2 to 3 weeks to get the results.
Okay, what I'm really headed here is that the major stumbling block that I'm seeing is the looping. And if we had something from staff to either tell us, yes, it would be a major problem, or no, it's not really that big a concern, then the only other thing that we're looking at is a fire hydrant. And the fire hydrant, I think, can be resolved in several ways. How hard, or what is the possibility of getting that modeling from staff?
So to do the modeling, we have an outside consultant that has that model for us. So we would have to pay that consultant to do the modeling. And so we would have to, the city would have to expend a little bit of money to do the modeling. And then yeah, we could come back with additional technical information on that.
Could that be done in a month?
I'm going to say, just looking at what we have ahead of us, we wouldn't be able to bring it back until October.
Can I make a comment on that? One thing about the modeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'd have to be making assumptions on future build-out, future water usage. Well, the build-out might be sort of hard to predict. So I can understand modeling for a current situation and perhaps modeling for the build-out of this subdivision. But when you say you're looking at the macro situation, the big picture, wouldn't you have to make assumptions that you wouldn't be certain of that that's what would happen?
Yeah, so as part of our water master plan, we look at that, right? And we make certain assumptions based off of what growth would look like as the general plan and the current zoning dictates. And so what we would likely do is run a scenario for existing and then run a scenario looking at a future condition to see what it might look like.
Is there anything that would inhibit the accessibility to this line on site in the loop that they're proposing to create, once the subdivision's done, the city owns the streets, accessibility to those pipelines.
Yeah, the only difficulty in terms of accessibility would be the section going between the two lots towards Gordon, right? It would be, we'd want it wide enough so that we could get equipment and whatnot in there.
Mr. Chairman, I feel like there's a couple issues that are getting muddled together, like on the modeling. This is, I think Phil would agree, if we're connecting those two dots, as you put it, that's the simplest way to put it. We're already connecting those two dots, a model connecting those two dots a different way. We have two connections between the dots. I mean, I think from a modeling standpoint, we're providing the loop. So regardless, this wall, adding this line in Willow is not going to improve that from a computer modeling standpoint. I feel may agree, but essentially, I think Phil was talking about that, and then he was talking about the issue of just accessibility and maintenance of the system. I understood him to be saying modeling's one issue, but they were wanting another line just for accessibility in the event of some catastrophic failure or whatever. And I guess that's where we're to your point, we're just saying we already have multiple connection points. It would be hard to understand what kind of a failure would prohibit, there's valves interior to the subdivision at every intersection. Any segment of any line that we put in can be isolated by turning off the valves. So, I think in my mind that those are two things that got kind of melded together. The model is one thing that we've addressed by connecting those 2 points. The accessibility is another issue that, that's the point that I think staff's making, that there would be improved accessibility to the line if there was another line in Willow, but that's what we're not understanding and seeing that as a redundancy. So thank you for your time.
What about satisfying the fire department requirements for the hydrant on Willow?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not aware of that requirement. I don't know what that, I know we, both staff and I quoted the requirement of the spacing of the fire hydrants. I didn't know that there's a requirement saying that there had to be a line put along a certain classification of road. For sure that hasn't been met in the past, which I know doesn't mean anything going forward. It doesn't, but I'm not aware of that requirement. Again, we have sufficient, the fire hydrants interior to our subdivision meet the fire code. There was no comments about the fire department on that issue of it, so.
If they're supplying the fire hydrants for their subdivision and there's no fire hydrants on Willow now and there hasn't been, why would there need to be?
So I guess what we're saying is our regulations require fire hydrants every 500 feet, and that also includes along the frontage of the development. And we're saying that the utility regulations require a water main to be extended across the frontage of the development, and those two marry together to where you have fire hydrants in all of the streets that are being developed.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to rush everybody, but do we have any more comments, any more questions?
I'm just kind of inclined to agree with the variance, other than clarifying this fire department requirement with the hydrant. That's kind of my impasse at this point.
Well, if that's actually an ordinance that applies to this, it'll have to be applied to the subdivision anyway.
I mean, and I will just point out real quick, when I initially brought this up during the plan review, I did have a conversation with the fire department, and they're requesting a hydrant in Willow.
So is that something that could be changed in the variance application to accommodate that and bring it back? Maybe we could revisit that at a later date?
Well, I'll tell you the truth, what I'm really thinking about, no more than what it is to run it off the main line that's in the subdivision anyway. You just go through a area and run a line out there and stick a meter or a water hydrant out there. I don't, if that's part of the subdivision requirements, it'd be out there somewhere where it fit. Peter, that's not a big deal, is it?
We could do that.
So it addresses that. Okay, so the other thing is looping. And to me, on looping, we got two choices here. Either wait for staff to give us an overall picture of what it would do to the whole system, or assume that everything's okay right now. Again, we're getting back into technical situations where we're talking to two very intelligent people, and it's which one you want to go with.
What is the cost to run that line from whatever street that is, up to Gordon, to fill that void?
So I believe our initial cost so far is almost $40,000, and the thing about the fire hydrants, I guess we're not completely clear on that. We might have to put 2 fire hydrants based on if the comment of just having to have a fire hydrant every 500 feet. So 2 fire hydrants, at about $5,000 each, putting the water line in, about $45 a foot. There's existing culverts there. You got to go underneath them. Got to put ductile iron, which the cost of that is almost like gold right now. Put ductile iron to 45 it down and go under the culverts. And we got power pole at the corner of Gordon with a couple of guy wires. It's going to be very technical, dicey getting through there. So material cost is about $40,000. Probably that includes, a normal installation for a contractor, but there's going to be extra costs for these situations I'm talking about, And then we're talking, obviously, traffic control, closing down Willow and all that kind of stuff. So
So give me a ballpark.
about 40,000, yeah.
Total?
Yep.
So less than $1,000 a house?
Pardon?
So less than $1,000 a
Sure.
house? Okay.
Yep.
So you're almost at as much expense trying to facilitate these fire hydrants as you are to run that line on Willow? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Really see the point then, if we have to satisfy that too. It's kind of apples for apples.
Why don't you go ahead and state that? State what you're saying.
If the cost is going to be comparable to run the loop line that the city's engineering's requesting compared to having to satisfy the fire department requirements to put those fire hydrants where they need to go, then it's kind of a moot point to do the variance if you have to spend the same amount of money to get it in there anyway.
I apologize, I must be misunderstanding the question. What were you talking about with the cost?
So the cost of running the loop line compared to cost of adding fire hydrants, from what I just understood, unless I misunderstood you, is going to be comparable.
No, okay, I didn't explain that correctly then. First of all, like the loop thing, we're doing that. We're proposing to do that. So we're gonna, if our proposal is accepted, we're gonna loop the line. It's just gonna come interior to our subdivision to Gordon. So we're looping the whole system the way there's several comments on staff's letter requested that it be looped for functionality. So we're providing that.
I understand that.
And then, so like if we're talking about running 1 fire hydrant out of the interior of our subdivision to Willow, then that cost is going to be around $5,000 for, if we're talking about running the water. Pardon me?
Is that all that's required, is just one?
I don't know, yeah, I'm not sure. Do you know, is there just 1 hydrant required?
It's going to be close.
Yeah, so.
There might be 2.
So we've assumed there's two fire hydrants, so we could still run those, like we could put one right at Geneautry on the existing line and run one mid-block through our subdivision. So then we're talking about 2 fire hydrants, that's about $10,000. The line to get them out there is another, say, $3,000 to $5,000. So maybe $15,000 to put 2 fire hydrants on Willow without the water line. That's one scenario. And then the other scenario would be running that whole water line up Willow and adding the 2 fire hydrants on that, and that would be about $40,000. So that would be the difference, 15,000 versus 40,000. But, you know, again, if we could, we would be happy to look at any recommendation from this group for sure. But, you know, we can get a contractor to bid on if the cost is an actual factor, we could get a contractor to bid on that line and do a comparison. So anything like that would be certainly something we could do.
Thanks for clarifying that.
I tell you what, I'm still coming back to the point of asking the contractor to spend another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for something that's not going to help. I'm coming back to this model, and tell you the truth, I'm thinking fair for the city and for the contractors. I know you don't want to look at any kind of delay in this, but if it comes back from the city that the model, this won't improve it, and it won't help that the looping that you've already got satisfies everything and it all works, and that we couldn't come up with a scenario that would make the thing fail. That's what I'm really looking at. So if we're wanting to satisfy everybody, we really kind of need more information from staff. Is what they're proposing, will it work? Or tell us, no, it won't work. And I don't know of another way to request that without staff doing a model of it.
So one thing I'd say is we can certainly run some scenarios, and likely what we would do is we would, I'm just trying to figure out how we would model it to show you what our concerns are. It'll be difficult, but you know, the issue, the question is it adequate to is it better to provide the looping interior of the subdivision or exterior of the subdivision, right? I think that's the question. And what staff is trying to say is it's better for our operations to have that exterior of the subdivision. We could run a model, and likely what we would do is we would cause failures in different parts of town, and we would probably kill the loop within the subdivision, because that's one of the scenarios that we're looking at, right? If that line were to go, what would that do to the overall system? And so, again, it may not fully adequately show what our operation guys and everyone else is trying to illustrate of it's better to have it on the exterior of the subdivision than on the interior of the subdivision. But we can try and show what that might look like.
I'll just make a comment here. I'm not real big on this modeling idea. My experience, many years of observation, is you can hire 3 different experts and get 3 different answers. That sounds somewhat cynical, but I think most of us have seen that type of situation. The model is based on certain assumptions. Well, what are the assumptions we're making? So I just don't think another modeling would do much good. Essentially, the argument is interior or looping inside the subdivision or outside the subdivision. To me, that's the question to be answered. And again, I'll say again, I think the water line down Willow is just an additional expense, a waste of resources. I don't know. Just to me, it's redundant to have to do that.
Does the not having that line on Willow affect the water quality? Does the line, if we didn't have the line on Willow, is that going to affect water quality, or is it taken care of by the loop?
Well, we'll have 2 dead ends, right? There's that little stub going to the north. That would be dead, stagnant water. And then there'd be that little stub to the south, that's dead stagnant water. And, you know, it depends on the flow. We don't like dead ends that will never, ever see flow going through it. And there's a small risk for a water quality issue. I would say it's small, it's not huge.
Has your staff seen this, where they showed adding that in the corner up there?
Yes, they
They
have.
have? Okay.
Yes.
Well, we've had pretty good conversation. Does anybody want to make a motion at this time, or would you like to leave discussion open?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as long as they can satisfy the fire department requirements for the fire hydrants.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
It carries with the ayes. Okay. All right, we're going to number 4, announcements by commission members. Do we have any announcements, any requests, anything that anybody up here would like to see happen? Okay, if I have no announcements, then I'm going to ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned.